The hostess's voice dropped to a barely audible whisper, her eyebrow arching high. "You brought your kids to a date?" Graham, a millionaire CEO in disguise, calmly shifted the wriggling twins in his arms. "Yep," he replied, balancing a diaper bag on one shoulder. "It's not really a date." The woman looked skeptical, but with a gesture indicated a table by the window. "You're in luck. Only one reservation with children tonight. Table 5. His heart hammered in his chest, a rhythm more frantic than any high-stakes corporate negotiation he'd ever led. Tonight, Graham, usually found gracing Forbes's covers, was a phantom of his true self. Faded jeans and a plain T-shirt replaced his custom-tailored suits. His personal driver and luxury car were swapped for a borrowed 2009 Honda Civic. Even the twins, Ella and Emma, had mismatched hairbands holding back their curly locks. He gently set them down, helping them into booster seats. Immediately, Emma reached for the salt shaker, while Ella clutched her well-loved pink stuffed bunny, surveying their surroundings with wide, curious eyes. Graham took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the entrance. He already knew his actual date. The one from the app had bailed. Her curt message still stung. "Sorry, can't date a broke dad of 2. Good luck." He was just about to round up the girls and make their exit when the front door swung open. A woman entered, a tote bag slung casually over her shoulder, a paperback novel clutched in her hand. Her eyes scanned the room, briefly narrowing as she checked her phone before settling on his table. With a nervous smile, she walked directly towards them. "Hi, I'm Sadie," she said, a nervous energy in her voice as she brushed a strand of golden hair behind her ear. "Sorry I'm late. The bus was slow." Graham blinked. I know. Not exactly a grand entrance," she added, settling into the seat across from him, barely glancing at her phone again. "But hey, you mentioned a window table with kids, so I figured this must be it." He opened his mouth to clarify the misunderstanding, but then he truly looked at her. There was an understated sincerity in her eyes, an awkward yet endearing quality to her smile, and beneath it all, a familiar weariness that resonated deeply with him. "No problem at all," he replied, his voice softer than he intended. "We just arrived." Sadie's gaze drifted to the twins, who stared back at her with wide-eyed curiosity. "I didn't realize I'd be dining with—" "Such esteemed company," she quipped with a warm smile. Emma, ever direct, squinted. "Do you like cats?" Sadie chuckled, a genuine sound. "More than I like most people." Ella, inspired, slid a purple crayon across the table. "Draw one." Without hesitation, Sadie picked up a napkin and began to sketch. Within moments, the girls were dissolving into giggles, pointing at her charmingly lopsided kitten drawing, utterly enchanted. Graham leaned back, a wave of stunned surprise washing over him. The usual rigid awkwardness that accompanied introducing someone new to his daughters was entirely absent. This wasn't forced. It was effortlessly natural. Dinner arrived, heralded by a flurry of delightful chaos. Spaghetti sauce splattered onto the pristine tablecloth, an orange juice glass tipped precariously, and several napkins were sacrificed in the joyful melee. Yet Sadie didn't flinch. She calmly helped Emma wipe a smear of sauce from her chin, then launched into a hilarious story about the time she slipped and fell, face first, into a birthday cake at the library. The twins erupted in peals of laughter, utterly captivated. Graham felt something profound stirred deep inside him. In his chest, something warm, unfamiliar. It had been years since anything had felt this natural. Sadie didn't inquire about his job. She didn't mention wealth or success or anything remotely resembling his public persona. Instead, she asked Ella about her favorite animal. She listened intently to Emma's elaborate story about a magic rock she had found. And when she caught Graham watching her, she simply smiled, not coyly, not flirtatiously, but with an open, genuine warmth. A server approached their table and, mid-meal, gently placed the check down. "Take your time," he said politely. "Dessert's next." Graham stared at the leather-bound folder. His hand instinctively went to his back pocket, but then froze. This wasn't his car. These weren't his jeans. He wasn't even sure there was a wallet in them. For a moment, a wave of panic flared in his chest. Sadie noticed, but made no fuss. She simply pulled out her worn leather wallet, slid out a card, and handed it to the server with a soft smile. "It's fine," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've had worse dinner dates," Graham heard her say to him. He turned to her, stunned. "You didn't have to." "I know," she interrupted gently, her gaze unwavering. "But I wanted to. You looked like you just needed someone to be kind." He fell silent. The bustling noise of the restaurant seemed to fade around him. It wasn't about the money. He could buy the entire block if he wanted to. But in that moment, it was profoundly about the way she saw him. Not the Westwood of headlines and shareholder meetings, but the man fumbling with booster seats and juice boxes. A man who was trying. He looked at her. Truly looked. There were soft lines of weariness around her eyes, probably from too many late nights spent with books, not parties. Her blouse was simple. Her nails were unpolished. She wasn't trying to impress. She was just there, present, human, kind. As the restaurant began to thin out, their table remained a warm hub of laughter and crayons. Sadie reached for a breadstick, broke it in half, and offered one to Ella while continuing a story from her childhood. "I grew up in a house where money was tight," she said, her eyes distant with memory. "But we had books stacked in every corner on every shelf, even on the floor. My mom used to read to me every night by candlelight when the power went out. That's why I became a librarian. Books made me feel rich even when I had nothing else." Graham listened intently. There was no envy in her voice, no longing for what she had missed, just quiet gratitude for what she had been given. It struck him deeply. Most of his dates had wanted to know about his house in Aspen, or what kind of wine he liked, or how many cars he owned. But Sadie never asked a single question about his career. She didn't seem to care what he did, only who he was. And for the first time in years, Graham felt truly seen. "You must love your job," he said. Sadie nodded. "I do. The kids who come in after school, they light up when I remember their names or set aside a book just for them. It's small, but it matters. At least I like to think it does." Ella leaned her head contentedly on Sadie's arm, and Sadie gently brushed a crumb from the child's cheek. "These girls," she whispered, "are something special." Graham swallowed hard. "They are my world." When the meal concluded, Graham stood and offered to walk Sadie to the bus stop, or at least give her a ride. "It's not a fancy car," he said with a wry smile, "but it gets from point A to point B." Sadie hesitated, glancing out the window. "It's okay," she said softly. "I like the walk. Helps me clear my head." He tried not to let his disappointment show. "Of course." She gave a little wave to the girls, then bent down to kiss Ella on the forehead. "Thanks for the cat drawing, artist." "Come draw again," Emma called out. Sadie's smile lingered. "Maybe." And then she turned and walked into the night. Graham drove in silence. The twins were already dozing in their car seats, their hands still smudged with crayon. A single piece of napkin art fluttered from the dashboard, a scribbled picture of a cat with too many whiskers, and the words, Sadie plus Ella, in crooked letters. He stared at it when he parked in his garage, his heart tightening. His mind drifted backward to a different night, long ago, when his late wife Caroline had sat on the kitchen floor with the girls, drawing farm animals with washable markers on old newspapers. Her laughter had filled the room. That memory had haunted him, making every new connection feel like a betrayal. But tonight, watching Sadie with the girls, hearing her laugh as orange juice soaked her sleeve, he had felt peace. Not guilt, not fear, just the quiet sense that maybe, just maybe healing was not betrayal. Perhaps it was permission to keep going, to begin again. He looked at the drawing one more time, then folded it gently and placed it in the glove box. A fragile hope settled in his chest. He had no idea if he would ever see Sadie again, but she had already left something behind, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough. 4 days had passed since their dinner. 4 days since Sadie had unknowingly walked into the wrong date and completely disarmed him with nothing but crayons, spaghetti sauce, and sincerity. Graham could not shake the image of her face, the way she laughed with the girls, the way she paid the bill without hesitation, without judgment. All he had to go on was a passing comment she had made about her job. I work at the library near Pine Street, the one with the red doors. On Saturday morning, Graham packed the girls into the car again. He told himself it was just a casual visit to the library. No expectations, no plans, just curiosity and perhaps a little hope. The red doors were easy to find. Inside, the comforting scent of old pages and wood polish wrapped around them like a familiar blanket. Children sat cross-legged in a corner, clustered around a woman in a soft cardigan, a worn picture book in her lap. And then the bear said, "Who took my hat?" Sadie's voice rose theatrically, making the kids giggle. "That's her," Ella gasped. "She's here!" Before he could stop them, the twins raced, forward, squeezing between the other children, to get closer to Sadie. She paused mid-sentence, startled, and then slowly looked up. Her eyes widened as she saw Graham standing at the entrance, his hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders tense. "Hi," he said softly. She closed the book. "Everyone, we'll take a quick break. 5 minutes, okay?" The kids groaned but dispersed toward the bean bags. Sadie stood. "You found me." Graham nodded. "I remembered what you said about the red doors." The silence that followed was thick, not hostile, but uncertain. Ella held up a folded piece of paper. "We made you another drawing." Sadie took it with a soft smile. "Thank you, sweetie." Then her gaze shifted back to Graham. "You weren't the man I was supposed to meet that night." "No," he admitted. "You were meeting someone else." Sadie crossed her arms. "Then why did you stay?" Graham inhaled slowly. "Because I couldn't walk away. Not when someone finally saw me. Not Westwood, the CEO, or the guy with a ridiculous net worth. Just me. The dad trying to keep it together. The man who misses his wife. The man who needed a night that didn't feel like a transaction." Sadie's lips parted slightly, her expression unreadable. "I didn't lie," he said quickly. "I didn't pretend to be someone else. I just didn't correct you because, for once, someone wasn't looking at me through a lens of money or power. You sat down and listened to my daughters. You paid the bill without flinching. You laughed when things got messy." Her eyes softened, but didn't drop. He stepped a little closer. "My name is Graham Westwood. I run a company that probably made your library's donation boxes. I own too many suits and live in a house that's too big for 3 people. And most of the time I hate it. But the other night I didn't feel like any of that mattered because of you. Sadie swallowed, glancing at the twins who were flipping through books nearby. So, she said quietly. What now? I don't know, he said honestly. I just knew I couldn't let you disappear without telling you the truth. Not because I think it'll change anything, but because you deserve that much. She looked down at the cat drawing in her hand. It had a pink heart over its head and the words, "For Sadie," scribbled in black letters. What I saw that night, she murmured, was real. The way you looked at them. The way they looked at you. The way you watched me. Like you were seeing something that scared you. That wasn't fake. It wasn't, he said. She met his eyes again. But I need time to figure out what's real when everything else around you feels complicated. He nodded. Take all the time you need. A long pause hung between them. Not goodbye. Not yet. And that, for the first time, felt like enough. In the days that followed, their meetings were small, quiet things. Graham brought the twins to the library more often, on purpose, of course. Sadie would smile when she saw them enter, always pretending to be surprised. They even met at the park once, too, the girls running, barefoot through the grass while Sadie read aloud from a children's novel. Graham sat on the bench watching her, realizing how her presence made even an ordinary afternoon feel significant. Not flashy, not dramatic, just steady. Then, one Friday evening, a folded piece of paper showed up in Sadie's mailbox. Childlike handwriting scrolled across it. It read, "Dear Miss Sadie, come eat dinner with us. We made drawings and cookies. Love, Ella and Emma." And Daddy, too. Sadie pressed her hand to her chest and smiled, already knowing she couldn't say no. That Sunday, Graham drove them to a small cottage tucked away at the edge of town. "This was my mom's house," he explained as they pulled into the gravel driveway. "I keep it just as it was. It's where I go when I don't want to be Mr. Westwood." The house was modest and warm, with flower pots along the porch and an old wind chime clinking softly. Inside, Ella and Emma had transformed the living room into a gallery of crayon masterpieces taped to every wall. Sadie laughed as she walked in. "You weren't kidding about the drawings." Ella grabbed her hand. "Come sit by me." It was simple spaghetti again, by popular demand. Graham wore an apron that said, "Kiss the cook," and pretended not to be embarrassed when the sauce splattered onto his shirt. The girls chattered nonstop about library books and favorite colors. Sadie listened, asked questions, passed the bread, and never once looked at her phone. After dinner, Graham brought out a box of old board games while Sadie helped clean up. As she leaned down to tie Ella's shoe, the little girl's head tilted back, curls bouncing. "Your hair's in your eyes," Sadie said gently, reaching out. She brushed Ella's bangs aside and carefully clipped a tiny hairpin in place. Ella beamed. Graham stood in the doorway, drying a plate, his heart stilled. In that moment, something shifted. The way Ella looked at Sadie with pure trust, with the kind of affection only a child could offer freely, took his breath away. It wasn't forced, not coached. It was real. Sadie sat back on her heels and looked up. "I've never seen a child trust me that quickly." Graham's voice was low. "I've never seen anyone make them feel safe so fast." She looked at him, surprised. "I mean it," he said, setting the dish towel aside. "They don't take to people easily. After Caroline passed, it's like they could sense everything. The good, the fake. You walked into our lives and it was like they'd been waiting for you. Sadie's eyes glistened. She looked away, brushing a hand over her jeans. I don't know what I'm doing half the time, I just care. That's exactly what they need. The girls were now curled up with a picture book, their heads resting on each other. The evening light fell soft through the curtains. The world outside, its chaos, its headlines, felt miles away. Sadie turned back to Graham. You're different here. I'm myself, he said, when I'm not being chased by headlines or asked about stock projections. She stepped closer. You don't have to prove anything here. Not to them, not to me. He smiled. That's what scares me most. That it's real. Sadie's voice dropped to a whisper. Then don't run from it. Graham looked at her. Really looked. The kind of gaze that reached past charm, past surface. It lingered not because of romance, but because of gratitude, because of awe, because somehow, without trying, she had already become part of their little world. And for the first time in years, that world did not feel broken. The photo appeared online on a quiet Tuesday morning. A grainy image, taken through the branches of a nearby tree, showed Sadie holding hands with Ella and Emma as they skipped down the sidewalk outside the Pine Street Library. She was smiling. The girls were laughing. The caption underneath read, Mystery woman spotted with Westwood twins. Who is she? Within hours, her name was trending. By evening, the press had connected the dots. Paparazzi swarmed her small apartment building. Camera lenses peeked between blinds. Microphones thrust toward her as she left for work. Headlines speculated everything. Marriage, scandal, secret children. They tore through her life with no regard for truth. Graham saw the storm unfold in real time. His name was everywhere again, but this time it came with someone he cared about. Someone who had never asked for this. He tried calling. She didn't answer. At the library the next morning, the director called her into a small office. His expression was tired, regretful. There's been pressure, he said, not meeting her eyes. One of our top donors threatened to pull funding. They're concerned about the media frenzy. They say it's distracting. Sadie's heart sank. I didn't do anything wrong. I know, he said quietly. But they don't care about right and wrong, just appearances. She walked out of the library with her box of things, the whispers of co-workers following her like shadows. It had taken her years to build that small, quiet life. And now, with one photo, it was gone. That night, she sat on her couch in silence. Her phone buzzed. Dozens of texts from numbers she didn't recognize. News reporters, curiosity seekers, commenters with opinions. Only one message she read more than once. Sadie, please talk to me. I had no idea this would happen. Graham. But she didn't reply. The next morning, the chaos came to her door. Dozens of reporters lined the sidewalk in front of her building. Neighbors peeked out of windows. One woman down the hall shouted, Is it true? Are you marrying him? Then a new sound rose above the shouting. A car door slammed. Footsteps. The unmistakable hush that fell over a crowd when something or someone unexpected appeared. Graham Westwood stood at the base of the steps, his tailored coat unbuttoned, his hair a little unkempt from the wind. The cameras snapped wildly. He ignored them all and looked straight at Sadie's door. From the window above, she watched him. Her hands trembled at the edge of the curtain. He took a step closer, raised his voice just enough to carry above the noise. I can't change the world, Sadie, he said, his voice cracking slightly. But I can stand between you and it. I can take the cameras, the questions, the noise. Just say the word. Let me stand with you. She stood frozen at the door, her heart thudding painfully. Tears welled in her eyes. Her fingers hovered over the lock, but she didn't turn it. Instead, her voice came out small but clear through the door. You have to protect your daughters. Don't let them get caught in this mess. They're already in it, he replied. Because they asked about you every night this week, because they miss you, and so do I. She swallowed a sob. I didn't ask for this. I know, but neither did we. And yet somehow this became the most real thing I've had in years. A long silence passed. The cameras clicked. The wind blew. I'm sorry, she whispered through the door. But I need you to go. He stood there a moment longer, nodding slowly. Then he turned and walked back through the crowd, each step heavy, deliberate. Sadie slid to the floor, her back against the wood, the box of her library things beside her. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she wished the world would just stop spinning. Sadie had not moved the drawing. It was still taped to her front door, wobbly lines, uneven hearts, and the words, "We miss you, Miss Sadie," written in crayon. Ella had drawn it in purple. Emma's handprint was stamped in orange at the corner. For 3 days, Sadie paused every time she stepped outside, her fingers brushing against the paper, and each time she walked away, her heart aching. The media frenzy had calmed slightly, shifting attention to another scandal elsewhere. But the damage had been done. Her job was still on hold. Her name still floated in the ether of online gossip. She told herself it was better this way. Distance, silence, no attachments. But every night she dreamed of small hands in hers and giggles over picture books. She missed the messy dinners, the chaotic drawings, the warmth that had once filled the small house on the edge of town. She missed them. At Graham's home, silence had settled in, thick and hollow. The girls noticed it more than he expected. They didn't understand public scrutiny or donors pulling support. All they knew was that Sadie had vanished. On the third night, Emma climbed into his lap just before bedtime, her eyes glossy with confusion. Is Miss Sadie gone forever? She asked. Graham brushed a tear from her cheek. No, sweetheart. She just needs a little time. Emma clutched his shirt. Did we do something wrong? Graham's chest tightened. Not at all. She loves you so much. Emma's voice wavered. Then why didn't she come back? He had no answer. The next morning, he found both girls sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by crayons. They were quiet, unusually focused. When they were done, Ella held up the paper, a new drawing. This one of 3 stick figures labeled us with hearts floating around them. Above it, the words, "We bring our hearts." Graham looked at it for a long time. Then he stood up. We're going to see her, he said. Ella's eyes lit up. Emma clapped. They dressed quickly. No cameras followed them this time. He took the side streets, parked 2 blocks away, carrying the girls in his arms to avoid the lingering press. When they reached her door, the old drawing was still there, fluttering slightly in the breeze. He knocked. No response. He knocked again, softer this time. Still nothing. He looked down at his daughters. Are you ready? Ella nodded and reached up, taping their new drawing directly underneath the old one. Then the girls stood side by side in front of the door, arms stretched out. Ready for a hug neither of them knew for sure they would receive. Inside, Sadie had been sitting on the floor, surrounded by books she was trying to reorganize just to keep her mind busy. When she heard the knock, she froze. Then she heard it. Small voices giggling, the rustle of paper, and the unmistakable sound of love waiting on her doorstep. She opened the door slowly, and there they were. Ella and Emma stood with arms wide, eyes bright. No fanfare, no press, just hope. "Hi," Ella whispered. Sadie fell to her knees, arms flinging open, tears already streaming down her face. The girls ran into her embrace without hesitation, burying their faces into her neck. "I missed you," Sadie choked out. So much." Graham stood quietly behind them, his hands in his coat pockets. He waited until Sadie looked up, her eyes rimmed with emotion. "I didn't come with headlines," he said. "I didn't come with promises. I just came with my heart and theirs." She stood slowly, still holding the girls. "Why did you really come?" He exhaled. "Because I can live without fame, without money, without the noise, but not without this. Not without you." The girls squeezed Sadie tighter. She closed her eyes. "I thought I had to protect you from all of it." "You were trying to protect us by leaving," he said gently. "But that's not protection. That's pain." She opened the door wider. "Then come in." He stepped forward, the girls still wrapped around her legs. The moment was quiet. No reporters, no flashing lights, just four hearts in a doorway. "I don't need anything else," he whispered. She nodded, her voice breaking. "Me neither." And this time, no one let go. Life after that day did not return to what it had been before, but it became something better, different, quieter, more honest. Graham and Sadie began again, not in secret, not with fanfare, but with a quiet determination to do it right. There were no staged photo ops, no grand declarations, just walks in the park, story time in the living room, and grocery runs where Ella insisted on pushing the cart, while Emma rode inside it. Sadie moved slowly, cautiously, but she stayed. And Graham respected that pace, never rushing, never pushing. The world had already tried to rip her out of her comfort zone. He would not be the one to do it again. Instead, he asked her gently, "If you could do anything in the world, anything, what would it be?" Sadie smiled. "Start a reading program for kids who don't have books at home. For the ones who wait in the back of the library until closing time because they don't want to go home." Graham nodded. "Then let's build it." They called it Story Nest, a free mobile reading program that traveled to shelters, community centers, and underserved schools. Sadie organized volunteers, picked out books, and read to children with the same warmth she had shown Ella and Emma that first night. Graham funded it quietly. He let Sadie lead every decision. When reporters called, he declined interviews. Instead, his team issued press releases highlighting Story Nest and its impact. Slowly, the narrative shifted. Headlines became less about the mystery librarian and more about the program itself. At home, their rhythm became beautifully mundane. Sadie began staying for dinner more often, then overnight when the girls asked. She read them bedtime stories, voicing each character differently while they clung to her arms, begging for one more page. She taught them how to draw faces with emotions, how to write their own tiny picture books. Graham often watched from the hallway, his heart swelling with something deeper than happiness, something closer to home. One evening, after a story about a lost bear who found a new family in the forest, the girls yawned sleepily under the covers. Sadie tucked them in, brushing back their hair. Emma reached up, blinking slowly. "Miss Sadie?" "Yes, sweetheart?" "Can I call you Mama Sadie?" The room went still. Graham stood frozen, not breathing. Sadie's eyes filled instantly. She dropped to her knees beside the bed, clutching Emma's tiny hand. "If that's what you want, then yes, of course you can." Emma nodded, curling closer. Ella reached out for her too. Sadie kissed their foreheads gently, her tears falling silently. Graham stepped into the room, then sat on the edge of the bed, and took Sadie's hand in his. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The girls fell asleep, holding on to her fingers. Later that night, after the dishes were done and the house was quiet, Graham and Sadie sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the wind chimes his mother had hung decades ago. "I never wanted to replace anyone," Sadie whispered. "You didn't," he said. "You became something entirely your own." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I didn't think I had enough to give." Graham looked at her, his voice thick. "You gave them a safe space. You gave me a reason to believe again." Sadie smiled through fresh tears. "I guess this us just happened." "No," Graham said. "It didn't just happen. We chose this. Every small moment, every quiet choice, we made this." She nodded, her heart full. And in the stillness of that evening, under the ordinary glow of porch light, a family was no longer forming. It was already whole. 1 year later, much had changed, and yet everything remained beautifully simple. Sadie still lived in her cozy apartment above the bookstore on Pine Street. She returned to the library not out of necessity, but love. Children still ran into her arms, and her name appeared in quiet stories about story. Nest. But no one called her the CEO's fiancée anymore. She was just Sadie, and that was more than enough. Graham never asked her to move into his estate. He understood she needed roots, not marble floors. Instead, they spent most of their time at the old cottage, a place of crayons, warmth, and wind chimes. On a soft spring afternoon, they had a small family picnic in the backyard. Graham had rebuilt the table from the night they met, worn wood, mismatched chairs, and all. Sadie smiled as she saw it. "You brought back the wrong table." "Some mistakes," Graham said, grinning, "are worth keeping." The girls ran barefoot, tangled in daisy chains and laughter. After dessert, they disappeared inside and came back giggling, carrying a tiny box wrapped in napkins. "For you," Emma announced, dropping it into Sadie's lap. Inside was a ring made from soft rope and colorful beads, uneven and precious. "We made it," Ella said. "It's your special ring." Graham knelt beside her. His voice trembled. "I used to believe I'd only be loved for what I had. My name, the money. But then came a wrong table, 2 little girls, and a woman who looked past all of it and saw me." He took her hand. "I'm not asking for a headline or a grand ceremony. Just this. Be you with us, with them. Be the heart of this home." He paused. "Sadie Quinn, will you marry me?" Sadie laughed through her tears. She looked at the homemade ring and slipped it onto her finger. "We've been a family for a while now. You're just catching up." The girls squealed, circling them with hugs and giggles. There were no cameras, no breaking news, only sunlight, wind, and 2 children who had unknowingly crafted the most unexpected love story. That evening, as the sky turned gold, Graham and Sadie sat on the porch swing, arms wrapped around each other. "You weren't the wrong woman," he whispered. "Just the right one at a table no one expected." Sadie smiled. "And you were never the billionaire. You were the dad with kind eyes and spaghetti on his shirt." In the quiet of that ordinary day, they began the rest of their lives. Sometimes love does not come with perfect timing. It arrives softly, sits at the wrong table, and turns your world right. Graham had tried to guard his heart behind wealth. Sadie feared her small world could not hold something as big as love. But in the end, it was not the mansion or the money. It was bedtime stories, crayon hearts, and a woman who chose to see the man, not the name. Sometimes love does not come with perfect timing. It arrives softly, sits at the wrong table, and turns your world right. Graham had tried to guard his heart behind wealth. Sadie feared her small world could not hold something as big as love. But in the end, it was not the mansion or the money. It was bedtime stories, crayon hearts, and a woman who chose to see the man, not the name.